And it can actually happen in lots of different ways. They can literally just cut and run. That normally happens in relatively new relationships. They can leave at an argument happens and they just walk out and you don't hear from them again for a while, but they do eventually come back. So that feels like a discard because they won't answer your calls, they won't try and communicate with you, and they won't talk about what happened. They're not prepared to help you through the argument and look for solutions. It can be that they walk out on their family for someone else. And so there's lots of different elements of discard. But for me, the word discard sounds really permanent. And actually, with narcissists, what we've learned is that it's very rarely a permanent discard from a narcissist. They might quickly evaporate, but they usually do come back. Even if they're not brave enough, if you know too much about them, then they might not come back face to face, but they'll be watching you. They will be stalking you in some way. So discard, like I say, sounds really permanent, but to me, they don't discard you in that sense. It's more that they can't cope. Essentially, they can't cope with either you becoming strong, which often happens when you find your strength, when you stand up to them, when you see them for what they really are. They can't cope with that. They can't cope with anyone seeing past that mask. And so they will run and hide like a scared child. They will run and they will hide. It's their flight, fight or freeze. And they fly, they run away. And that was really frustrating for you. Because you want answers. You want to know, why did they do all these things? But they don't want to answer any of those things. They don't want to face the truth. And so, like I say, their flight response will kick in and they will absolutely do a run. Equally, they might leave because they found someone who doesn't know as much about them, who is a better source of supply for them, depending on their motivation. If they're money oriented, they might find someone who's richer and who can provide them with more of the trappings that they're after. It may be that they just want the attention. If you've got kids together, they can become very jealous of how much time you spend with the children, the love that you have for your children. And they might not be able to cope with that. They might not be able to cope with all the attention not being on them. We know that that's one of the DSM characteristics, is that they have to have all the attention on them. And so if they're not getting that, then they have to find that from somewhere else. And so they may go off with someone who can provide that. Obviously, that new person will follow the same pattern. And this is what you find with narcissists, is that they follow the same patterns as very much this cut and run. And like I say, I've talked about the different elements of that, but there's always this dramatic ending to a narcissist relationship, whether it's they're crazy, they did this, they did that, or they meet you and suddenly you're the love of their life and all of that kind of stuff, and that person's awful. We know that, but the pattern is that there's always this drama associated with, and so the discard has to happen so quickly because, like I say, they don't want any questions. They don't have the ability to problem solve. Part of growing up healthy, part of child development is learning how to problem solve, how to resolve conflict, how to stand up for yourself, how to build relationships that can take an argument. And narcissists can't do that. For a narcissist, the way that I'm not making excuses, but they grew up in an environment where arguments were horrendous. They were probably very, very dramatic. They were fiery, they were sometimes physical, and so they don't want to deal with that. They don't want to even though they can be that way with you, they don't want that back. So they run from that. They will run from an argument because they don't know how to deal with it. They don't know how to argue in a normal way. We all have fallings out. When you live with someone, you're not going to agree on everything. They're going to annoy the hell out of you at times, but you deal with it as adults. You sit down, you talk about it, you compromise. Narcissists can't do any of those things. And so you slowly start piecing things together as well. You start getting annoyed that you're the one that always compromises. You're the one that always bends. You're the one that always puts your wishes and feelings to one side. And they start to pick up on that and think, I'm not getting what I need out of this. My needs aren't being met. And it's all about their needs. As I talked about in the video the other night, your feelings aren't important. It's all about their feelings. And so when you're no longer able to do that, because we can't do that at times, it has to be about us. At times we have to put ourselves first, and that isn't being selfish, not in the slightest. That is self-care, and we should promote that, and that's a really positive thing. But the narcissist doesn't want that. The narcissist wants it to be about them all the time. And if you're no longer able to do that, it might be that you've got other things going on. You might have a stressful job. You might have relatives who need you. You might have children that need you. And so they can't cope with that because their needs aren't being met. They go to childlike state and they look for someone who can. What also happens, and this is another side of it, and this is family systems theory, is that they can emotionally cut off. And this can happen with, they will either leave their family completely, and you find this a lot with narcissist parents, that they will suddenly leave their children. They won't hear from them for years on end. Or they can discard you but keep hold of the children, and that's in a lot of parental alienation cases. But it's their emotional cut off. They discard the emotional side of it, and they cut off. They can't deal with you anymore. They can't deal with the ending of a relationship, and so they just run. Like I say, in parental alienation cases, what they tend to do is they push you out. They discard you from the family but keep the children, partly to hurt you, partly to keep control over you, but also then the children become the narcissistic supply. They become the ones who regulate them, who, when they're in a bad mood, the children's job is to keep them happy. And it's a perverse triangle. It's perverse caretaking of children, because normally parents respond to the child's need, but narcissistic parents, they expect their children to respond to their needs. And so they will push you out, deeming that you're not capable of meeting their needs anymore, and replace you with the children who will who they think will meet their needs. And children are desperate to please their parents, and they will please them. And this is why children of narcissists really struggle with independence. They struggle with making their own decisions, because they've spent all their life trying to please the narcissist and trying to make sure that their needs come first. This is why dependent personality disorder and codependency develops, is because that child doesn't want to be discarded. That child knows that's an option because they've seen it in action. And so they will bend over backwards to do everything they can to stay in that relationship. Their needs anymore. They deem that you can't meet their needs anymore. And it might be because that you figured them out and you no longer want to play their games, or you want to talk, you want to sort things out. You have an argument, or you find them out, but you want to talk about it. But to regain control, they can run. To hide from an argument or to hide from any more truth coming out, they will run. Or it might be that they want to, they found someone who meets their supply in a better way. Ultimately, it's very damaging to be discarded, because we don't get the answers that we want. We don't get that closure. We don't understand how it happened, why it happened. And as human beings, we need to close the loop. We don't like open-ended loops. Well, our brains really struggle to deal with that. We need to know answers. And so we can have this cognitive dissonance that goes on, that what we're feeling doesn't, we're angry and we're glad it's over, but we're annoyed because we didn't get the answers, and we're constantly, and it keeps us in that place much longer. So if you have been discarded, one of the best things you can do, regardless of the circumstances, is come to peace with the fact that you aren't going to get the answers. You aren't going to find out. The best thing you can do is accept that this is part of their personality disorder. This is part of their own development, and they aren't able to give you those answers. It's just who they are. Nothing you did made them. This was always inevitable. It was going to happen unless you stayed subdued and passive for the rest of your life, which would mean you've been incredibly miserable. This was always going to happen. So rather than looking for answers outside, looking for answers from the narcissist, accept that this is just who they are. This is how they deal with difficulties in life. They can't do it in a mature adult way. Their flight response kicks in and they run and hide like a child. So, like I say, look for answers within yourself. Work on improving your own self-esteem. Don't let this destroy you. Don't let yourself think, I must be such an awful person that they've suddenly done a runner on me. What did I do that was so bad? Don't have those questions, because they'll drive you insane. Simply accept this is who they are. This was always going to happen. I did nothing wrong. This is their personality. This is who they are. And let go. And I'm aware that's easier said than done, but that's what you want to be trying to move towards. And the second you are able to do that, it's like you can breathe again. It's like you can literally, you put your head out of the water. You stop drowning in the questions, in the back and forth. You can literally breathe again. So if you are going through discard, or you've been through it and you're really struggling with it, please do try and understand that, like I say, it's not your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. And just focus on you. Focus on moving forward. Focus on closing it yourself. Close that loop with the answer that this is just who they are. You don't need anything more than that. I hope you found that helpful. If you know anyone that will benefit, please do share the video with them. If you're new to the channel, please do click the subscribe. It really does help to get my channel out to more people. And if you liked it, give us a thumbs up. Again, it does help. Take care, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye-bye.